Hello and welcome to CIO News. I am Khushbu Soni, your host for the broadcast and the founder at CIO News. This is our exclusive interview series powered by Tata Communications. It is a recorded session and will be available on our website, that is cionews.co.in, and our CIO News LinkedIn handle. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest for today. We have Mr. Varadharajan Ragunathan, the Head Monetization and Customer Engagement from BigBasket. Mr. Varadharajan is passionate about innovation at the intersection of behavior, psychology, and technology. His proven abilities in building sustainable and profitable business unit on innovation and high performance teams. He's also passionate about markets investing, wearing an investor's hat as an operator helps him think through cross-cycle risk and marry long-term focused execution. So it is an absolute pleasure to have you today, and we're really looking forward to hear from your insights.
Thanks, Khushbu, and look forward to speaking with you and Saurabh. I just hope I can bring in some insights that I've had working on the e-grocery space and a little farther down on the e-commerce space in India in general. Behavioral psychology and consumer insights continues to be an area of endless passion for me, and I'm hoping that I can bring in some value to this discussion.
Absolutely. A quick introduction to Saurabh as well. He's our moderator along with me for today's discussion. Saurabh Chandre is the Assistant Vice President and Head of Sales for CX in India, APAC, and MECAA region from Tata Communications. Saurabh has 20+ years of rich experience in the area of internet communications and technology, and he's playing at the forefront for the fastest moving technology industry trend, that's Internet of Things. Saurabh has worked with many large organizations. Saurabh, thank you for joining and helping me moderate this discussion.
Thanks again, Khushbu. Thanks again for having me, and I really appreciate Mr. Varadharajan for your time. I'm sure that we will be getting a whole lot of new insights by speaking to you today. So really appreciate your time here today. Thanks.
Fantastic. So to move forward, my first question, Mr. Varadharajan, is for you. Customer experience as a domain has undergone immense disruption in the last decade in India, especially with the onset of digital-first companies. And as you've been as a leader in this domain, what's your take on some of the drivers for this disruption, and how do you see it evolving from here?
Sure. Let me try and understand it, the way I've sort of framed it in my mind. I think, as we've sort of, as we've sort of been moving forward over the last couple of decades, I think essentially, to put things sort of fairly simplistically, right? It seems like some industries, right, are becoming more and more quote unquote utilitarian. Like, for example, I think on the grocery space, I think people want to spend as little time as possible, right, to go out and get groceries, get their full sort of basket of fill, right? So what customers are really looking for on, let's say, something like e-commerce or in the e-grocery space is as wide a selection with as fast a service as possible, right? I think, whereas, for example, on something like fashion or a makeup or a jewelry, you're looking for a richer experience, sort of the difference between, let's say, flying business class versus flying economy, right? You're fine with the latter as long as you're able to get your destination on time. And for a lot of people who are flying domestic, getting to the destination on time without too much of a hassle is far more important than having, for example, let's say, a great 5-course meal on the flight, right? I think it's important to know where the industry stands, right? Industries where I clearly sort of see this trend of customers want to get a lot of stuff done very quickly, right? Or banking, right? I can't think of the last time we all must have gone into a branch, right? In fact, I suspect the next generation of people may not even see a branch in their lifetimes. Right? Basic utilities, like for example, I'm sure no one's ever gone and booked a train ticket or paid a power bill or a utility bill or a water tax or what have you, right? So essentially, if you fall on that side of the spectrum, right, as a customer service, what are you sort of thinking, right? How do I make sure there is continuity of engagement? How do I make sure that I make it as easy for the customer to pick up from where he or she left off, right? That is probably far more important than, for example, in the case of, let's say, fashion retailing, where someone may be looking for example, a richer experience, an integration into Instagram to know what is it that their favorite celebrities are wearing, and so on and so forth, right? So I think you're going to see a bipolar world in which some industries are going to get more and more functional. Sort of think of it like the dichotomy in manufacturing that happened 100 years back, where some industries, you had the dichotomy between a Rolls Royce and a Ford, right? A Ford became more and more and more efficient. It became faster. You had an assembly line. You could order a few palette of colors, whereas you had a niche spectrum of high-end cars like a Rolls Royce or a Bentley, which would sort of get handcrafted. You could choose your own color, your own upholstery, and so on and so forth. So you got to sort of figure out what part of the spectrum does your industry fall in, and how is this broadly sort of migrating, right? Of course, the industry itself is too much of a broad classification. You may want to see, for example, within e-groceries, right? I think we probably think on something like gourmet or world foods, right? A pasta or Lebanese food or what have you. Customers may be far more willing to look at wider options. But if it is salt or toothpaste, right? You're probably just snapping your finger and saying, hey, salt. Can you show me the top 3 options? Can I just get done with it? And I suspect you may be willing to buy brand X, right? If brand Y is not available, as long as you're able to get brand X in the next 3 hours, right? And if brand Y says, I'm going to take 3 days to deliver salt, you probably are going to say, hey, it's just not worth it, right? I think you're seeing this, think of the customers' experiences as a portfolio, right? I think what customers are consciously, right, traded off some towards the utilitarian aspects, right, towards richer experiences, right? And this, for example, was an interesting commentary that the Airbnb guys made. They're saying, especially post-COVID, with this YOLO sort of mindset, you're seeing a lot of people trying to not get sort of engrossed in the day-to-day routine sort of experiences, right? Paying bills, utility, dropping off kids to school. And they're saying, hey, whatever I can sort of get done faster, quicker, even if it comes at a premium, I'm willing to live with that, right? As long as I'm able to spend, let's say, 2 weeks a year, right, in, for example, a wooded cottage in the middle of nowhere, hiking and exploring stuff, right? So I think that's really where, I sort of see customer experience sort of emerging. It's important for you to know the center of gravity. It's important for you to know the flow. And it's important for you to know what are your strengths and where can you, for example, play towards, right? So if you were to, for example, take BigBasket, for example, right? We clearly think we are finely tuned for your supply chain experience, right? You order stuff, you get it within 2 hours. Right? I think we still probably have some distance in terms of improving on the UX, the CX, etc., right? The fundamental sort of thought in our philosophy is a lot of the customer experiences is governed by your supply chain / fulfillment experience, right? Whereas I guess for example, a travel or a ticketing website, it may be a price / discovery experience, right? To each his own. And now that we've got some of those basics right, we are now thinking what's the best that we can do to layer on a cream on this cake in terms of better personalization. For example, if Khushbu has already bought, I know what, Tata, Rava, Maida, etc., last month, right? Why does she have to go through the grind of repopulating her basket? Can you just make that extremely easy? So because every one of us buys, I know what, a bunch of 10, 12 things, Tata, Rava, rice, Maida, etc., then so toilet cleaners, toothpaste, toothbrushes, shampoo, soap, etc., right? Why can't we try and make that simpler by just riding on your existing choices. Why is that important? If I liberate that time, maybe you will linger around and shop for maybe a better quality perfume or a better quality deodorant or a makeup, right? Products that actually impact your quality of life, and hopefully are more profitable for us as well, right? So I think that's really where I see this sort of moving towards. Of course, it's a simplistic sort of stereotype.
Right, absolutely. I think you touched on some very important and essential points on our discussion. You mentioned about the change of the demand from the customers and how it's transforming. We've also seen the customer expectation as far as deliveries are concerned has really increased, and hyperlocal players like Blinkit and Zepto have really started working on their customer expectations at this front. So I wanted to understand, you did mention about from a CX standpoint, the focus is around the supply chain experience. How is BigBasket evolving itself to drive higher customer loyalty? And now BigBasket is also doing multiple tie-ups with grocery stores and setting up dark stores. So if you can throw some light on that.
Sure. Like I said, I think we keep sort of wondering about what's it that an online player like us can do, right? That an offline player can't. Right? To start with, an offline player can't remember personally, right? Each and every person who's coming, right? So let's say you live in a small place, right, and you walk in every single day to a neighborhood kirana store, right? There are things that he knows just by your face, right? That you ask for example, salt, he knows it's probably brand X or brand Y, right? Can we do the same thing at scale, right? Thanks to data, AWS, cloud, etc., right? Two, right? Can we break down your shopping journey, right, in far more finer detail, right? What are, for example, your key value drivers? What's it that, for example, Saurabh comes into the store for, right? And that's a lead item on his grocery list, right? Followed by items that he wants to have a slightly larger set of choices in, and items that are purely exploratory, right? For example, as a stereotype for a lot of Indians, whatever I mentioned, the basic sort of hygiene is still very tightly controlled. I suspect most of us can't think of more than 2-3 brands in toothpaste and so on and so forth, right? But for example, if you take something like beard care, right, which is probably an emerging trend, right? You probably have 40 brands competing for the first purchase, right? In such cases, customers actually wants to see a larger choice, right? And sort of getting the granularity matrix of the right number of choices, right, coupled with personalization, right, is the holy grail, right? And I think one of the things that I think that someone from the beauty industry used to say was that he used to be genuinely amazed by how much influence, right, the friendly folks at the salon who do your hair or do your makeup have over you, right? Simply because they're recommending something exactly at the time when your mind is sort of going through that experience, right? How many times have people in the salon come and told you, hey, you, for example, need a facial or acne removal or what have you, right? Per se, if you had just heard this outside of the salon, you probably wouldn't have acted on it, right? But the fact that you're going through that experience and hence your mind is primed for that, right? You're thinking about that as an issue or a problem or what have you, right? And the fact that that person is actually interacting with you and has your undivided attention, right, makes it extremely compelling, right? And something that creates value both to the customer as well as to the brand as well as to the salonista. And we always wonder what's the right sort of way to, right? I think the truth is that when I'm buying a salt or paneer, right, I'm not actually buying a salt or paneer. I actually have subliminally, right, a finished good in mind, right? I'm thinking I'm going to make paneer tikka masala or what have you, right? Obviously, with some learning, right, and some A/B experiments, we can then figure out, hey, what's going on in this person's mind, right? And based on this person's past experience, right, the address in which the person stays, because if I know the address, I know broadly tens of things about, right? I know the price per square feet that this sells at. I know the size of apartments. How old is this building? Is this a gated community? Is this a premium one? An ultra premium one, and so on and so forth. So if you can overlay a lot of these sort of surrogate indicators, right, plus your own shopping / browsing experiences, right, then I become far sharper, right? And to me, like I said, if you're falling on the other side of the spectrum where your service is becoming more and more utilitarian, much like a power bill or a broadband bill, right? No one's emotionally attached to it, right? I think the key is going to be personalization at scale. Can you make something extremely sharp, relevant, and actionable for the customer so he gets on with it? And why is that important? The faster and quicker you make it, the more likely the customer is to come back to you and expand his breadth of shopping, right? You came in to buy, let's say, 15 things. I gave you smart choices for 3 or 4 items. You're going to think, I had a great experience. I also got these stuff delivered on time, right? Let me try and buy 2 more things, right? Subliminally, right? Most of us may not have noticed it. This is how you actually build trust in a retail sort of shopping, right? You're going into nitty-gritty. It's not like people go and buy 5K straight up front, right? Unless it's an exceptional sort of case. You start with 1K, 2K, 3K, and then you start lingering around. You spend longer time on the shelves. If the basic quality of the onions isn't great, I suspect you're not going to linger around long enough to buy a deodorant or a makeup or what have you, right? So nail the basics, thoughtfully expand selection, and try and build genuine sort of surprises, right? On the third piece, right, the genuine sort of surprises is where I think there's a lot more work that we can do in the Indian context, because unlike all of the people on this call, I suspect the Gen Zs or folks who were born after 2000, right? I think they're going to be a lot more sort of drawn in because of videos and gaming, right? So I often genuinely get surprised about how much of word of mouth cooking happens by seeing TikTok and YouTube videos, right? And passing around sort of comments about the quality of each other's comment of cooking based on photographed, end products and end cook states and so on and so forth, right? So can you, for example, help, let's say, someone who's 21, 23, 22, who is just starting out on his first journey, right? By helping him cook his first Maggi, right? And hence, of course, make him a loyal customer, right, for life, right? Everyone has done it, right? From Amazon Prime for students in the US to Gillette, for example, distributing razors for free, in colleges, right? You just have to sort of pivot this to the right way of creating value, right? Or, for example, someone's moving houses, for example, right, which we would know because we have your store address, right? One of the first struggles that people go through in the first 20, 30 days after having moved houses is to establish that ecosystem, right? Where do you find the istri wala? Where do you find the grocery shop? Where do you find, a place to get your puncture repaired, etc., right? Or for that matter, even a small, sort of neighborhood tailor, just in case you need to don a button, right? Can we be of help there? Right? Can we plug that gap, right? And anything that you can do, right? Proactively identifying a customer's pain point and delighting that person with this, right, leads to extraordinarily strong NPS / loyalty, right? And the third piece, essentially, just going back to the same thing, is how do you weave commerce, right, into conversations, content, and other types of interactions is something that I think we've still not cracked in the Indian market. And to me, that's going to be the sort of important piece to crack, right? People talk a lot about this next billion, what have you, right? I don't think the ingress for the next 1 billion is going to come because you're going to have, for example, an app in Tamil, right, or in English, or in Hindi, right? That's because fundamentally, right, all of our keyboards are English, right? Even though I am very well versed in Tamil, I've never typed in Tamil, right? I'm fundamentally not even used to this concept of how to type in Tamil. And I think it's very important. This is maybe a nuanced sort of observation. Most of our Indian scripts have far more than the 26 alphabets that English has. Right? Most Indic languages have 400, 500 scripts. How do you even design a keyboard for that? Right? How do you transpose this keyboard into that is going to be a challenge. So to me, right, I think the right way for someone to get ingress would be through things like video shopping, right? TikTok, right? Where, for example, I feed someone a content, right, about how do you make an egg Maggie in 2 minutes, right? People like it, they share it, right? And at the end of the video, can I make the shopping experience one click and seamless? Can I just say, hey, click on this, you'll get egg, Maggie, chilies, onion, etc., right? That becomes a much more logical sort of way to gather folks, irrespective of which language, which culture you belong to. The ingresses may be different, right? The video that you may be seeing, if you're in Bengal versus Tamil versus Hindi, may be different, right? But it's easier to sort of fold them all together through a downstream action rather than make it far more difficult for the guide to sort of navigate through upstream content, which obviously has to be localized. The problem with upstream content is a lot of people are only consumers. They can't create. The problem with a lot of your e-commerce interactions, for example, is that you also have to create, however so small it may be. So you still have to type. And what should I type? How do I even type Maggie in Tamil or in Bengali, right? Is a difficult sort of problem to solve, right? So I think that's really the new frontier. I see, Indian languages sort of creating an immense opportunity for us to create what I would call content, conversations, and then commerce. Right? And the model will have to go through a lot of experimentation, like most things. But if done, right, this could really be a template for the rest of the world, including South America and Africa.
Right, fantastic. I think great insight. Saurabh, your thoughts on the same?
Certainly, great insights again, Varadharajan, right? And not so only from the perspective of hypothetical scenarios. The key, what I really appreciate you coming out with is tangible scenarios, right? What is on the ground reality. You're talking about aspects from the scenario pertaining to people cooking, the kind of behavioral aspects that they put in there, the kind of expectations that they have from there when they go to shopping, what kind of real life scenarios do actually people come across, and the expectations that they come across. So this is very well captured, Varadharajan. Really appreciate you again sharing those thoughts to us, and great insights for us all together. Just to add on to that, I have a quick question, a following question onto that person, right? So now from the perspective of social commerce, you mentioned about social commerce, you mentioned about content, you mentioned about creation, you mentioned about the conversation piece, right? Now, in terms of social commerce, how do you see that play across various BigBasket apps that you have? You have BigBasket Monday, you have BigBasket Now, you have BigBasket. One more proposition that you have, right? So across all these three different apps, how do you see the social commerce aspect coming out to that? Are you really looking forward to build something entirely new from a CX point of view, or replicating the success of what you would have seen coming out from some established unicorns which are there right now?
I think we'll have to sort of, the answer to that is we'll have to be thoughtful about how do we move upstream, right? What that essentially means is, right, I just think simplistically put, your e-commerce transaction is an endpoint, right, of you having consumed some content of you, for example, feeling hungry. You're saying, hey, I'm feeling hungry at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. What should I do? Right? So, and the first thing that strikes most people is, hey, can you just make yourself a Maggie and chai at 3 o'clock, right? So, there is a need, and then you wonder, how do I do it, right? And you probably go to TikTok, or you call someone, or you call someone you trust and say, hey, I need help. How do I make Maggie? Assuming you're making this for the first time. Right? And then people tell you, you need to do this, cut vegetables, put this, boil this for 2 minutes, etc., etc. Right? So, if e-commerce is the end point, right, and you're then saying, hey, let me just order these on BB now. Can I try and go one step upstream, right? So, can I make, for example, sharing of a recipe easy, right? Sharing of a recipe in video, right? And we used to think sharing of a recipe was the secret, right? So we actually went down the street, we made a bunch of recipes, very well written, great text, great photos, but didn't work because today is an age of videos. No one wants to read anything, right? So harsh enough, but you have to swallow it. Right? So, and then we said, now we're thinking, hey, if anything has to be sort of circulated, it has to be a meme or a video. It can't be more than 2 minutes long. Right? Who's got time for a 20-minute lecture on how to make it? Right? So can you try and make that? Right? So, but I think the current friction is that you're looking at a video to make Maggie and chai, and then you have to remember all of the ingredients that were there in the video, right? And then you have to remember where to order them on, which could be BB, which could be one of our components, right? Can someone just go upstream and fold this entire piece, right? It's for example, a thought that we have at this point of time, saying, can we just try and capture that? Right? So essentially, can you have extremely good quality curated videos, including by influencers, that make it easy for you to do this, right? So to answer your question, I think it's a function of the demographic, right? For example, on our Q-commerce, which is BB now, the demographic, the average sort of center of gravity of the demographic tends to be a little younger than it is for our regular BB, which typically tends to be a slightly older, married with kids, buying for the entire month sort of person, rather than the impulse driven. I just woke up at 12 o'clock, right? I don't have time. Can I make aloo paratha on the fly sort of person, which typically tends to be the customer for BB now. Right? So I suspect it may be easier to start with BB now, for example, right? On that. Right? So we try some of this, then we try and improvise on it, right? The other holy grail, right, is that, is that how do I play around with price, right? Unbundling to make your shopping experience richer, right? What does that mean? You may be, typically when you're entering a store for grocery buying, right? There are a bunch of these list-driven items that are there at the top of your mind, right? As you shop through the items on the list, you also realize that there are these satellite items that you need to make this richer, right? No one thinks of kasuri methi, right? Thinking, hey, I need to buy kasuri methi. You're thinking, I'm going to make palak paneer, so I need paneer, palak, asafoetida, salt, pepper, and then, eventually towards the checkout, you start thinking, what can I do to add some aroma and flavor to this, right? And hence you start thinking, can I add some garam masala? Can I add some kasuri methi and so on and so forth, right? What if I could sort of proactively nudge you into doing that, right? So I think that's really where, to me, social commerce plays an important role, because the more you can help visualize an end product, build emotional engagement with it, and finally help reduce the friction of sharing, right? And I would actually say reduce the friction from sharing to action. That sharing to action is probably being never done at all in this world, right? You still have e-commerce being looked at as a separate sort of monolith, right? You're saying, I need to buy something, I'll go to Amazon, Flipkart, BigBasket, right? I need to look at a video, I will come here, right? Is there a way to thoughtfully marry these two, right? You can't do this too fast because your brand positioning will suffer, right? It has to be a lot more sort of thoughtful, gradual, extremely strongly woven. Maybe you can't start with like about 10,000 videos. You probably will start with 200, 300 videos of the most commonly cooked dishes or do-it-yourself chores in the house, and say, hey, this is how you get them done, right? So, for example, how many of us probably know how to clean the ducts of the AC in our house, right? So this is very important, right? If you've used an AC long enough, you would know that it's a very pressing problem. That's probably the singular reason why ACs break down, right? And you need, for example, I know a colin, a brush, you need a ladder, you need a stool, etc., etc., right? So, can you get that done? Can you make shopping easy and effortless when it comes to a pressing problem like this, right? Or perhaps even, be a marketplace for such services, right? If you can't do it, right, I will direct you to I'll be a marketplace, right? But obviously these are difficult questions to sort of answer, right? I think that's where we really see social commerce playing a role, because the most important insight in social commerce, right, Saurabh and Khushbu, is that one, you're sharing, right, and two, you're getting instantaneous feedback often on whatever that is, right? Of course, a lot of that feedback may be genuinely just very quick emotional reactions, right? But you distill through some of that, right? You would often find insights that would probably take you 2 months, 3 months to gather in an offline, right? And which is why you have a bunch of these D2C brands, right? Like a Wow or whatever, right? They build their brands by just being extremely responsive to customers, right? If your grandmother's wisdom was that add some onion to your coconut oil to make this grow faster, because coconut obviously has got volatile compounds, right? Just add it and make a new variant in 15 days flat, right? If you're a large coconut oil manufacturer, you'd say, no, this is taboo. This will interfere with the positioning of my mother brand, blah, blah, blah. Right? Can you try and be agile on that, right? So of course, you will have to then carefully weigh questions about how much of this will have to be done through your in-house brand versus being a marketplace for third-party brands, right? And how much of this can you actually physically deliver, right? There may be needs which are niche, too difficult, too small, restricted to one single region of India, and so on and so forth. So you'll have to sort of draw a line as to what's the right level of granularity, and then figure that out. So long story short, I think social commerce is a great way to talk to the younger audience, go more upstream into the content consumption part of it, if not the creation part of it. C, gets quick feedback about what the customer is thinking about, right, of your product/service. And D, try and find out thoughtful ways to marry social conversations with commerce interactions.
So again, key points, Varadharajan there, right from demographics aspect to the consumption of the content aspect, the right marketing, the right blend of the do's and don'ts, as you rightly mentioned, because of the social and geopolitical scenarios. There could be some stuff which is available, some stuff which is not available. So accordingly, then articulate the proposition to the users who are actually consuming it. And then coming back to BigBasket now, and BigBasket now being one of the more targeted segments, I understand from you, considering the demographics of the audiences or the consumers, when you see that social interaction is going to be more relatable, if I may say so.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thanks again. Thanks for that.
Great. I think wonderful insights, Varadharajan, and thank you for sharing them through our platform on CIO News. I'm sure our viewers are going to get some great pointers. Thank you, Saurabh, for joining us on behalf of Tata Communications. Thank you so much. It was wonderful to host you both, and I look forward to having many more interactions.
Thanks again, Khushbu. Thanks again, Varadharajan. Really appreciate it.